exactly?
Okay, so we're gonna, my illness started many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a baby. I'd had my fourth child, my son. It was 5 months post that. And at that time, we only got 17 weeks of postnatal time to be at home with our child. It was devastating to me to go back so soon. And not that he's my favorite, but just because I knew he was my last one, right?
Right.
And so what ended up happening is I went back to work, and I was working actually at a medical business college, and I was writing a medical program and also working as a director of placement for, I think at that time we had about 200 students anyway, and in different medical programs. And what ended up happening was they decided to do a potluck at work. And that potluck, of course, I love food.
Mm-hmm.
Will always admit that I love food. I like to try different things in different cultures, and we had a lot of different cultures there, and so I tried everything. And unfortunately for me, I got sick, and never really found out where the source came from, but there was a few of us that got sick, and I was very sick. I mean, vomiting and diarrhea like you would not believe. And so we're going to talk about a lot of things today. And it lasted about 10 days of being very, very chronic and very sick. And normally most people would recover after a gastro bug like that, you know, a gastroenteritis or food poisoning. I just went down this slippery slope. I did attempt to go back to work and ended up in the hospital one of the days at work. And ended up having to take time off. So what ended up was this chronic bowel problem lasted for approximately 2 years. And so in the first 3 months of that illness, I lost 53 pounds.
Wow.
And I was just in some ways fortunate at the time after the baby. I felt terrible because I gained quite a bit of weight during that pregnancy. And now when I look back, I go, thank heavens I gained weight, because I'm not sure I would have made it had I been at my pre-pregnancy weight. And so I learned from that it's always actually good to maybe have a little bit of weight just in case you are faced with chronic illness. And maybe that's mindset, and maybe it's not needed, but that was me from this point on. So what happened during those 2 years was I did what everybody else does. And that is I see a physician, you know, you go, they say, oh, you'll get over it. That lasted 2 or 3 months. And then by the third month, and I'm down 53 pounds, I walk into the doctor's office one day, and he looks at me and he said, something is definitely wrong. I don't know what, we need to start doing some series of tests. So, you know, then we start with the regular stuff, the stool samples, the urinalysis, the blood work, many, many, many times of blood work. After that, that didn't work. So then it was, okay, so we better get you to a specialist, because now I've got irregular heart rhythm, probably because I'm so malnutritioned and so weak. I looked like I had cancer, and a couple of them had said, you look cachectic, which is basically the word that they use for being precancerous. And even to hear that, you know, sometimes it's really scary, right? Even though I've worked in the medical field for 20 years prior to this illness, it was still a scary diagnosis when you've got a baby or a young child at home. So the next thing was to see specialists. I saw a cardiologist for the irregular heart rhythm. I saw an infectious disease specialist trying to figure out, you know, did I in fact have a food poisoning? Did I pick up a parasite? You know, tested for Lyme disease, all these different things, because now I had sore muscles. I was diagnosed technically with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, still with no answers. No, you know, to me, they're a label, but they're not an answer. And we still today don't really have those answers, right? So I did all that. I had a couple of admissions to critical care. I went by ambulance a couple of times during this time. It's a terrifying time when you're chronically ill, but no one really knows what is going on. And in my mind, this whole time, I had a food poisoning and things are going really badly. Another thing that happened because of the amount of bowel movements I was having was that I became sensitive to everything. I could not believe. All of a sudden, I had all these allergies to foods that I'd never had before. So I lived on a homemade soup with very specific things in it that would give me nutrition. I didn't eat any junk food because I couldn't eat any junk food. So, that was one good thing, but not good because I wasn't getting the carbohydrates. I wasn't getting enough protein. I was just so deficient in everything. I could not pump gas without feeling like I was having a seizure. I couldn't go in stores because I walk in a store now, I don't notice any smells really at all. But when I was ill, when I walked into a store, I could smell everything. The plastics, the tires were at the corner of the store and I'd be at the other end. I could smell them. My senses were heightened. And so, when I look back, looking at me now, it's hard to believe that I was sick. And it's funny, when I was going to do this talk today and I told my husband that I was going to tell my story, he said, I hope you have pictures of the before and after. And it was the one thing I didn't have, but I will post them. I will attach them to this so that you can see the difference in what I was like then to compare to what I was now. So I'm living proof that you can rebuild and regrow, but there's a journey to take. And so that's basically what I wanted to talk to you about.
So, obviously Western medicine wasn't getting you the answers that you were looking for. So where did you go after that? Because I know your story is probably reaching a lot of people out there saying, I've had this sickness, I felt this symptom and that symptom, and I keep going back and forth to doctors. So where did you turn after all of that?
Well, it's funny because, along with when you're chronically ill and you can't do the things you want to do, I couldn't even walk a block. So, I wasn't doing anything. So I got up one day and I just said, I had this feeling that I wasn't going to survive. I really believed that I wasn't going to make it. And I got up one morning and said, they can't figure out what's wrong with me. I need to look at alternative things. I need to really start advocating for myself. I knew enough about medicine. I knew all the medical things, but I knew that there was another side. And even though I had sort of really only been Western all my life, I think when you face something like this, you're willing to sort of say, I need to be open-minded. I need to look at other things. And I had a friend at the time that I knew had been doing a lot of work with vitamin and mineral therapies and, was considered a quack at that time. And I think I may have even thought that myself at one time, but I realized that I needed some help. So I actually was driving to his office one day, got halfway there, felt terrible, and thought, I can't just show up looking like this and begging for help. So I stopped at a payphone. Payphones were there. I didn't have a cell phone at the time. And I called him from the phone and in tears and saying, I think I'm going to die. I need help. And I'm hoping you can help me. Can I come see you? And he said, where are you? And I said, I'm half a mile away. He said, come right now. I owe him my life. I went there and he took one look at me and he'd known me for years. I'd worked for him at one point in time. And he said, we need to get you some help. I've heard about this naturopath up north. I think you should go see him. So that was arranged. I just want to say that that visit cost me a ton of money. It was $500 plus $200 for supplements. And I do want to say, Western medicine helped. They got me through 2 years, right? So they helped. I'm never going to put them down. Next was a naturopath. He helped. He got me a little bit better, but still not where I needed to go, because it works the same way. If you don't know what's going on with somebody, you basically have to guesstimate. It's like guessing a treatment therapy or a regime or something like that, right? So you start by saying, okay, well, let's try this herb. or let's try this thing that makes you more alkaline, or let's try this thing that gives you more enzymes so you know, break down your foods more differently. And I remember that I had to actually have a spreadsheet. I'm not sure what I made it in, but the spreadsheet basically gave me my times all day long of everything that I was supposed to do and take, all the foods I wasn't supposed to eat. And I, you know, of course, switched to a lot of soy foods and you know, they're more of a holistic diet. But what happened to me was I was allergic to everything, especially soy, without realizing it. So I got worse because now I had changed all these foods that normally would be right for everybody, but for me, who's chronically ill, was not right. So what did I learn from that is that, you know, just because something is said to be good or some nutritional advice is said to be good for you, we are all genetically different and we are all in different situations. And we need to make sure that what we're putting into our body is what we know that we can handle and absorb at that time, right? So that was one thing. So the naturopath did do some work for me, but not everything. I was then introduced to a chiropractor who was a master herbalist. And I'd heard that he had a girl working in his office that did something called applied kinesiology. And I needed to know what foods were bad for me. And at that time, that was one of the only things that was available. So I made an appointment and a visit there, and she did a bunch of muscle testing. And during that course of that muscle testing, she introduced a rainforest herb, which was linked to helping with amoebic type parasites. And I was arguing with her saying, I'm sorry, I've had all the stool samples. I do not have a parasite. She said, will you just trust me? You know, she believed at that time that we test for parasites, but there are different parasites all over the world, and I had traveled a lot. And I think each country tests, I believe at that time, we're talking 20 years ago, for those that are sort of endemic to that location, right, to that area. So, you know, it made sense to me. It was, well, maybe, yeah, maybe they didn't pick up the one that I could have had, right? So I started taking that herb, and 3 months later, I was back to, I would say 95% normal. I could go back to work. You know, what does 2 years of being chronically ill mean to a person? It affects everything. It affects your marriage. It's a strain on your relationships. It's a strain on your family, especially if you have children. Your children is seeing you going by ambulance, being admitted to hospitals, seeing specialists, not knowing what's going on and going, you know, my kids thought I had cancer and that they just hadn't found it yet. You know, these are all things that can happen. It's really hard on you financially. And on top of all that, then there's the guilt, right? Because you feel guilty because you can't provide for your family what you were able to provide before. You couldn't be the support for them. You know, you had become their financial burden, your spouse's financial burden. You had become their weakness. Because here's those who know me know I'm a very strong person. Like, I'm very strong. And during those 2 years, I was not strong. Saying that, though, that one day when I got up and said, I need to do something about this, I decided that after doing these things and seeing what she did for me in one visit, I decided I was going to study applied kinesiology, because I knew that there was a missing piece to the puzzle. And the puzzle is that we need to be able to reduce the amount of guesswork when we're working with somebody, right? Because we listen to symptomatology or symptoms, right? And we have what we learn in books, right? We have what we learn in school, and we use that knowledge to the best of our ability. But sometimes there's more than that. There's more to that picture. And if we don't ask the right questions, you know, had I been asked, have you traveled? Right? Maybe that would have come up. Had I been asked, have you camped? Had I been asked, have you had insect bites? Right? Things might have changed. I think that a lot of the times, you know, medical professionals are so overwhelmed with their caseloads that they're really hindered by time. Right. You know, working in that field for so long, I remember that, you know, there was multiple times where we were double booking and triple booking. And this isn't by choice. A lot of people think that people in this profession do this because it's all based on money. No, it's based on the fact that there aren't enough physicians to treat how many patients there are with these disorders. So it's better to get them in at least and start the work than you know, to be booking them so far apart. That's my own personal opinion. But I decided to go back to school. It was what started me thinking, in order to stay healthy, save myself, I need to go back to school. I knew that it was a slippery slope and that I could possibly go back to where I was, and that wasn't going to happen. So I wasn't 100% healed. When I was in school studying preventative healthcare, I chose preventative healthcare because I knew I didn't want people to get to where I got. I wanted to help people build immune systems, which is more important nowadays than ever before, especially, you know, when we're looking at this pandemic, we're looking at immunizations and things to help people. That's great. Will we get it in time? Who knows? Will they have side effects? Who knows? But why aren't we focusing a lot on preventing them from getting it? You know, I was reading a study this week on that was done in Spain, and they studied people that had been admitted into the hospital with the diagnosis of the coronavirus, right? And realized that I think it was 60% of those people had a vitamin D deficiency. So why? I mean, it's so simple to get a vitamin D into you and take it, you know, for 3 months, right? To build things up to prevent you from getting sick. So that's why I went back to school. Initially to save myself because I had a baby that needed me. And I felt that I wanted to make sure that I was going to be around to see him grow up. You know, I kind of made a deal with God that if he let me survive, that I would help others. And so that was a big part of it for me, I think. You know, it was good for my spiritual awareness and the ability to know that if I can be healed, that I could possibly help others. So it's been a journey, and I've been, you know, I've studied many modalities: holistic nutrition, iridology, applied kinesiology. I've studied colonic therapy. I did that for 4 years. That was amazing for me to do those things, to learn so much about the digestive system, right? And how that works, to actually be able to see people on a daily basis. And 4 years of experience is so much better than any diploma that I could ever get, right? Actually working with people. So that's basically what I did and why I ended up being a practitioner. Right now I'm studying, you know, microcurrents and frequency therapy. I've been doing that for quite a while. I was introduced to that 10 years ago. My first introduction was through something called radionics. I love vibrational frequencies. I believe that we all vibrate at a certain level. I believe that we need to keep that our bodies resonating at a certain frequency in order to stay healthy and keep ourselves healthy. So that's where I'm at right now.
I think your story is super inspiring. And I think that a lot of us as a society, we get lost in society. We get lost in the healthcare field. And I think that in a lot of aspects, when you do go from doctor to doctor to doctor, and you don't necessarily get that title, and you have those loose ends that still haven't been tied up, and you still go through life thinking, okay, I'm handling it. I haven't cured it, but I'm handling it now. And I think that you taking the control back is what so many of us lack. And we need to really do in our lives these days, because a lot of us, if we go to the doctor, you get to almost ask one question. And it's like you go in there for one cause. And it's like, if you want to discuss this and this and this, you have to do another visit. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is we don't have the time as a busy society to get visit after visit after visit. And so we tend to shove our healthcare down as far as we can. And I think that's what makes somebody like you, who's been there, done that, so inspiring for us. So that we know, okay, if we go there, we're not going to be lost. we're going to be heard. And so many of us as a society, we want to be heard because we haven't had that chance to say, I am sick. Like, I do have a condition. And we go through life almost thinking we have phantom conditions because nobody has told us otherwise. And I think that's a real shame, because those conditions lead into bigger and worse things down the road. So, I mean, I'm so happy that you caught that when you did. You studied that. You did what I call all your homework. And I think that we need to do that when it comes to our life and our journey, is we need to take back our health.
Yeah, it's, I cannot say, you know, the one thing, I think we mentioned this before we got talking here. My passion right now is to make people hopefully realize that we can feel healthy right up until the hour that we don't. Right. Okay. And a pure example of that is no one knows when they're going to have a heart attack. No one knows when they're going to have a stroke. I definitely did not know that I was going to be unhealthy for as long as I was. And I still to this day, because, you know, I didn't find out what was actually really at the root cause of what happened to me. For 2 years, there was a lot of damage done to muscle, right? Muscles atrophy, you can rebuild them. But, you know, it's very difficult when things get deep into tissue to have a 100% recovery, right? You can have a 95% sometimes if you're willing to do the work. But if we can just sort of work towards letting people know that you have to do the journey. I cannot tell you how many things I tried in that 2-year period, right? In order to find that one thing that would work for me. And we tend to get sort of, you know, well, I'll try this. If it doesn't work, I'll try something else. If this doesn't work, I'll try something else. And then we look back at that one thing and think, oh, that was a waste of time or a waste of money. It's never a waste of time or a waste of money, because everything that you do, you're learning. And maybe it didn't work for you, but sometime in the future, you may have a friend or you may have a family member that has that particular condition, that one thing that you took that didn't work for you may work for them. So it's an educational tool, right? And I've always said that the more tools that you have in your toolbox, the better it is for you and for everyone around you. Because you may pick up something that someone else may not. And I had a case this week where that person would never have even known what I found, right? And or what my equipment was able to tell me or warn me about, right? And we have to be willing to look outside of the box. Sometimes when new sciences come in, you know, we're so tuned and programmed into believing there's only one way to do something. And you're looking at somebody who's 20 years Western medicine and loved it, right? I was, you know, on the other side of the table getting the histories and all those things, right? And then all of a sudden I'm in a position where I'm just about to learn that it doesn't always work. That's a harsh reality for someone like me, right? And it's a harsh reality for others. And, you know, I have nurses coming to see me over the past few years, and they were the same way. You know, when you have a belief system, it's very hard to come out of that belief system. And you don't know what you don't know in any aspect of life. You don't know what you don't know. And there's so much to learn, and it's a huge journey. But if we can just get people to realize that prevention is way better than cure. You hear this all the time. An apple a day keeps a doctor away. Where did that come from, right? Nutrition is where it's at. Feeding your cells, feeding your body with what it needs in order to keep the cells healthy. You know, and I'm just a huge advocate of that now, because I know it can be done. I know you can rebuild. And it's really important that people understand that. Don't wait until you get there, right? So yeah, I guess the other thing too is I had basically said financial, because financial is a big reason why people don't look out to preventative practitioners. in any way, shape, or form. And just so you know, there's many modalities out there that work amazingly well. I've had people on these Tuesdays live at 5 that are offering tremendous services, right? It's not just about me. But financially, people look at this as going, well, you know, I have OHIP and OHIP covers all my medical expenses. I can get a prescription, you know, especially if you're over 65. I don't know what it is anymore. It's $2 in Canada if you're over 65 to get a prescription. So, you know, these are the people that need the help more nutritionally than anybody else, but they will choose to go this route most of the time. Well, one, because sometimes they really have to, but secondly, because they don't feel they can afford it because they're on retirement pension incomes and things like that. But you know, you can, so for example, and I'll just use mine as an example, like you can get what we call a body scan, right? To take a look at where you are vibrationally or energetically to see where there's a possibility that things could go wrong for you for $99. And, you know, I see people, no negative connotation here, I see people putting money towards things that eventually will do nothing for them. And if you don't have health, you have nothing. You don't have a job. Mm-hmm. You don't have a job. It's hard to pay a mortgage or rent or, you know, buy groceries or do all these things. And number one should be you. We tend to put ourselves on the bottom of the list when it comes to finances, when we should be putting ourselves on top. At least one visit once a year to make sure that, yeah, it looks like I'm doing well. There's nothing's 100% guaranteed, but it's worth saying, you know, yeah, I can afford, I can find $100. You know, the one I saw was very expensive. And I want to be honest, I had to borrow money to see him. I didn't have that money. But up here told me if I don't go and I don't start this journey, I'm not going to make it because Western medicine for me isn't working. And so there are times where we have to look at different things and different ways to do it. And we have to put ourselves first and put the money aside for us so that we can stay healthy for not just yourself, but for your family, your friends, for your significant others that need help with their health as well. If you're a practitioner, I have to keep myself healthy so I can help others.
Right. I think we deserve a good quality of life. Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, everybody deserves to live their best life. And we have to simply give ourselves the credit to do that. And we have to say, you know what, I'm worth it. And I think as soon as we start to say that, some of us get into that mindset where we don't want to seek help because we don't want the answers. And I guess that brings us back to the question of, do we care about ourselves enough to say, you know what, I'm ready to live my best life. I don't have to be sick. I don't have to have this condition. And I guess you would tell the viewers, I mean, you did say not everything is 99%, but it's worth a try to see if we could lower the effects. If we can take a condition and make it so it's not, it's more bearable and it's not as much house consuming, meaning can you get off the couch? Can you do things that maybe you haven't been able to do? You know, to give yourself that quality of life and say, you know what, I'm worth it. I want to enjoy my kids or my grandkids or my great grandkids. Yeah. And to know that you are worth it to seek help. And, you know, it doesn't ever hurt anybody to just ask and then see what happens. And I know that we have a lot, as a society, we have a lot of big words like trust. So I guess the biggest things that I can say to people is, if this video is something you're seeing right now, there's a reason. So maybe this message is for you. Maybe, you know, you reaching out and say, okay, that's me. I'm sitting, you know, maybe I do want to cook this year for holidays. Maybe I do want to get some of that shopping done instead of doing everything online. Like being able to say, I deserve my quality of life. I want my life back. And I think that's the power. We have the power to make that decision, but we have to simply do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there is maintenance, right? You know, I have a drink. Right? I drink this every single day. I change the flavors so I'd get bored, but I am definitely putting minerals and vitamins into my body every day now. I'm not waiting for it to happen before I say, oh, I better get some vitamins. And, you know, you know, and do I cheat? Absolutely. Do I love chocolate? Absolutely. But, you know, if and what I do then is I binge and then I don't eat it for a while, right? It's not that I've got cupboards full of chocolate bars and I'm going to eat them every single day of my life. You have to, nothing is bad for you as long as you're not doing it all the time, right? Having an occasional drink isn't bad for you, but drinking a case of beer a day, that would not be good. So everything within reason, right?
There's moderation. Yep.
Yes. Absolutely.
I think it's all about, you know, jumping out there saying, you know what, maybe I'm worth it to try a new way. Maybe if that old way is not working, those doctors have seen me, I haven't really got the proof I wanted, I don't feel better. So maybe now is the time, if you're asking yourself why I don't feel better now, maybe now is the time to say, you know what, there's a new year, a new me. And so I want to take my power back and I want to get my new you and say, you know what, I'm going to take that new chance to find somebody that might understand me. You're worth it. You're worth it for the new year to have a better quality of life. So let's start 2021 and say, you know what, I'm going to get my health back. I'm going to take my control back, my power back, and I'm going to find that one person and reach out today so that I can start living my best life 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't accept no diagnosis. That's the other thing too. Like, I remember, you know, for the first year or two, I basically just accepted it. Well, they can't find out what's wrong with me. I'll just accept that I don't have a diagnosis. Now I've realized is that, you know, the 2 years I spent looking for a diagnosis, I was just looking for that label because somehow that told me I wasn't crazy. Right? If I'm given a label, I'm not crazy. However, the point is we need to just keep searching for the thing that's going to make us feel better. Not stop searching for the label, right? Accept the symptoms and say, how can I change this, and start working towards this. It's a longer journey for sure. It's not like taking a prescription where you're going to feel better fairly quickly, but at least you're getting to the root of the cause and you're correcting it so it doesn't keep coming back on you. Right? And it's like anything else. If you have a brake problem, sometimes it's better to go to a brake specialist. If you have a transmission problem, you go to a transmission specialist. If you're looking at nutrition and how to make cells healthy, it would make sense to go and see somebody who actually, you know, knows more than what I call the SAD diet, the silly American diet, right? Go and see somebody who's trained in that area that can help you give your body what it needs the most. But more importantly, tell you what you shouldn't be doing. You need to find somebody who can tell you what's creating inflammation in your body. Your body. We're all genetically different, not, you know, just something that they study and say, well, don't eat eggplant because it's a nightshade, right? Specifically for you, because some people can eat nightshades and not have any problem, right? We're all different. That's what I want.
We don't also want to borrow trouble though, right? So we also don't want to sit there and say, okay, I'm gonna have this cause, and because of that, this person says a diagnosis, so therefore I have this issue and this issue and this issue. So sometimes going in and doing a body scan is really important, because I think that can say, okay, let's focus on this. Like, here's the red flag, here's the highlighted section. Before we jump the gun and say we need a specialist, let's see what your body's doing. Because sometimes causing down that inflammation to go down can help those other systems not react, right? Absolutely. So I think being able to do something for $99 and be able to say, you know what, I'm gonna see what's going on with me, I'm gonna see what's going on with my body, and see if I can control it now before it gets out of control, or before I kind of like jump the gun and say, I'm going to go to this place. And before we know it, we're on 10 medications. So I'm a firm believer that I want our body to heal the natural way as much as possible. And so getting that intervention early is definitely better than waiting, like in your situation where it's kind of got down into the tissue. So we can avoid that. For those of you who are already at that stage where Lynn was, she can still help you. So the good thing about that is she can still do a body scan, and she can still see what your system's doing and how it's reacting. And that's the plus point in that. Those of you who haven't quite got there, Lynn can also see, okay, this is what's going on. This is where it might become dangerous. And if we watch this and this and this, you might be okay. Kind of like somebody who has allergies. You know, before we go to anaphylactic, we want to check our allergies, right? And we want to say, okay, if you can just stay away from dairy and eggs and all these things, you don't have to go to anaphylactic. So doing that scan might help you say, okay, these are your conditions. This is what you stay away from. And this is how you can continue your health for now. And then hopefully we don't have to get you in that anaphylactic stage, right? That's the point of preventive care.
Absolutely, definitely. So yeah, it's 5:37. We're a little bit over, but I hope you guys appreciate what we've done today. Kimberly, thank you so much for being part of this talk today. It's important that, you know, it's not always just me. But the last 4 weeks we have been talking about chronic illness, and I definitely wanted people to know where I was coming from and why I was doing it and have a better understanding. For those of you, thank you. This is a different kind of better platform. This is a platform where people come together, professionals come together to help others educate the world on the different modalities that are out there that can help you through these things. So if you're interested, please go and take a look at adifferentkindofbetter.com. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I can definitely help you with that. If you are a person that's watching in on this, please know that you can also be part of that platform and have the ability to see all the different videos that are available to you that will help you on your journey to health for $20 a year. It's virtually very little for something that's very useful. So we hope to see you next Tuesday live at 5. Thank you, Kim, once again. And thanks for joining us, everybody. We hope to see you soon. Take care and have a wonderful evening. Bye for now.